This is level M, list 3, and we're doing the day 1 page. And our contractions today are isn't, short for is not, haven't, short for have not, hasn't is a contraction for has not, wasn't is a contraction for was not, hadn't is a contraction for had not, couldn't is a contraction for could not, wouldn't is a contraction for would not, shouldn't is a contraction for should not, mustn't is a shortened version of must not. Now then we've got doesn't for does not, didn't for did not, don't for do not, won't for will not, weren't for were not, can't for cannot, shan't for shall not, and aren't for are not. So the tricky ones are more down this side, so let's have a look at some of the things we've got there. So remember in does you have to have, if a word ends in O, you must have 2 vowels before the S, so don't forget to put that S in there. And of course the apostrophe is going in to show the contraction where you've taken out the letter. So if we go down here to don't, we've got do not, won't. Now this is tricky. Won't comes from the word will not. So we've changed that word quite a bit. We've taken out the ILL and substituted it for an O, and then we've taken out the O in not and put the apostrophe in there. So weren't, were not, can't. Now a lot of you may be tempted to put an R in there. If you look at the words that it comes from, cannot, we don't have an R in there. We don't say can't, we say can not or can't. So don't put the R in. So now shall not is we've taken out the double L in there and the O, and we've joined those two words together, and we're putting the apostrophe where we've taken out the O in these words. Are not sounds a little bit like aunt, as in your mother or your father's sister, but so a relation. But this aunt spelt like this is short for are not. So let's go through and read, sound and spell one of these words, and then you can go ahead on your own and finish them off. So we've got isn't, isn't, ISN apostrophe T, isn't. So to do the apostrophe, it's a dot with a little tail on it in the air. And once again, if you're speaking, you could use these contractions, and you could use them as part of speech in a written piece. But if you're writing something formal, then you should always use these words in their extended form, not as contraction. Level M, list 3, and we're doing the day 2, and we're working on more contractions today. So we've got isn't, that is short for is not, haven't is short for have not, hasn't is short for has not, wasn't is short for was not, hadn't is short for had not, couldn't is short for could not, wouldn't is short for would not, shouldn't is short for should not, mustn't is short for must not, and doesn't is short for does not. So in most of these words, we've taken out the O in the not part, and the apostrophe goes between the N and the T where we've taken out that O. So let's try writing the word isn't. Isn't, ISN apostrophe T, ISN apostrophe T, and you can do the rest of those on your own. Now this is following the same pattern that we've had previously, so read the sentences and write the contraction for the words in the bracket. So isn't will be the contraction for is not. Isn't the weather today pleasant? So we put in a capital letter there because it's the start of a sentence. Put your apostrophe in where you've taken out that O. Remember, the apostrophe is like a dot with the tail hanging off it higher in the line at the top of the word. You can do the rest of those on your own or within your group if you need to discuss them. Down here it says write the 2 words, circle the letters to be left out, and write the contracted word. So this is similar to what you did in the previous list. So we've got isn't is short for is not. We've circled the O because that's the letter we're taking out, and then when we've written it in its contracted form again, we've put that apostrophe in. So haven't is short for have not. Circle the letter that you're taking out and then write the word in its contracted form at the end, and don't forget to put that apostrophe in. Now down the bottom you've got proofreading. You've got to work out which one doesn't spell correctly with the apostrophe in the right place. Couldn't, shouldn't, and wasn't. This is level M, list 3, and we're doing the day 3 page, and our words are didn't, which is short for did not, don't, which is short for do not, won't, which is short for will not, weren't, which is short for were not, can't, which is short for cannot, shan't, which is short for shall not, and aren't, which is short for are not. So let's see if we can read the word, sound the word, and spell it, and then write it. So we've got didn't, D-I-D-N apostrophe T, cover it and write it. And then you can finish that on your own. Then it says read the sentences and write the contraction for the words in brackets. So the words are did not. I've got to make them into make that word form into its contracted form. So I didn't break the glass. So I'd write it in here. Didn't, with the apostrophe in between the N and the T. So we know in most of these words here we're taking out the O. So where we've taken out the O and joined the two words together, we're putting an apostrophe in where we've taken out the O. You can work those through as within your group to work out what the contracted forms are. Down the bottom it says write the two words, circle the letters to be left out, and write the contracted word. Now this is similar to what you've done on day 2 and in your previous list. So don't comes from the word do not. You've got to circle that O, because that's the letter you're taking out, and then you write don't, put the apostrophe in where you've taken out the O, and finish off the word. Fill in the gap with a list word. You've got to work out which word fits best in each of these sentences. So something like going fishing in the river as something like catching blowfish. So you will have to work out which words fit best there. And just remember too, when you're doing any formal writing, you shouldn't be using contractions. You should be writing these words in their extended form. Level M, list 3, day 4, we're looking at independent clauses and simple sentences. So what is a clause? It's a group of words which contain a subject and a verb. And the subject is a noun. The verb is doing the action of the noun. So Elizabeth is the noun or the subject, and slept is telling us what Elizabeth is doing, what the noun is doing, or what the subject is doing. The bird chirped. Bird is the subject of the sentence or the noun, and chirped is telling us what the bird or the subject is doing. So what is an independent clause? Well, it's a clause that can stand alone as a sentence. It's going to make sense on its own with nothing else added to it. It is a complete thought and may be a simple sentence. So quite often, if you find a sentence has a subject and a verb, or a noun and a verb, it's already a simple sentence without having lots and lots of words in it. So here you have to circle the subject. I suggest that you highlight the subject one colour in all of these clauses, and you can underline the verb, or I suggest you just choose a different colour to colour the verbs a different colour. It would be much quicker and easier for you. So just go through and do that, highlighting the subjects and highlighting the verbs a different colour, and then we're going on to the next part of the activity. So while these independent clauses could become simple sentences, they would not make very good simple sentences because there's not a lot of information in them. You've just got a really basic message. So to make it more interesting for the reader and to make your writing more interesting, we're saying that you should add a few more words to describe the subject and describe the verb. So we want you to use some descriptive words. Now, if you're describing the subject, you're using adjectives. If you're describing the verb, you're going to use adverbs. So choose 4 of the clauses above and add more information to make interesting simple sentences. So let's take this one here we've used as the example. Amelia ate. Well, that doesn't tell us much. Amelia ate a delicious pizza. You could write that, or you could even make it more interesting. You could say Amelia greedily ate a delicious Hawaiian pizza, or something like that. Or so you could add even more adjectives and adverbs to that very simple sentence than what we did as an example. So you've got to choose 4 of these clauses and write 4 interesting sentences down here. Not simple ones, not just the subject and verb, but something with adjectives and adverbs in it as well. So change these sentences so they say the opposite by using a contraction. So if we say Tom can jump, to make it say the opposite, we'd say Tom can't jump. If we say Claire was singing, we'd change it to the opposite by saying Claire wasn't singing. So we're not asking you to say was not singing, we're asking you to use a contraction there. So you have to join was not together to make it say wasn't. You can do the rest of those on your own and write your sentences over here. And then write 2 simple sentences, but make them a little bit more interesting so the reader enjoys working with them.